Hi there, my name is Kara, and in today's lesson, we'll be looking at speaking part 1 of the IELTS. So first of all, you should know that in order to do well on the IELTS speaking parts, you will need to use a wide range of vocabulary to talk about various topics such as food, travel, home, accommodation, and the like. You will also need to be able to use grammar correctly in your speaking answer, particularly using correct tenses to talk about the past, the present, and the future. Finally, your speaking answer should be fluent and your pronunciation needs to be clear. So basically, grammar, vocabulary, fluency, and pronunciation are the 4 keys to your success in the IELTS speaking. Throughout our speaking lesson series, you'll learn important training exercises, tips, and strategies to help you improve all 4 skills. So make sure you subscribe to get the latest IELTS speaking lessons. Okay, in today's lesson, we're going to learn some basics on IELTS speaking part 1. First, we'll look at how part 1 works. Then we'll look at how to fully answer a part 1 question. So let's get started. So let's talk about part 1. Part 1 lasts between 4 to 5 minutes and is the easiest speaking part. The examiner will introduce themselves, then you will introduce yourself. For example, hello, my name is Kara and I'll be interviewing you today. Hi, my name is Emily. Nice to meet you. This is followed with about 8 to 10 questions about yourself, and there will be around 2 to 3 different topics. These questions aren't that difficult. Here are some examples of what the examiner could ask you. Let's say the examiner asks you about your country. They might ask you what your country is famous for, or are you planning to live there in the future? Then the examiner might ask you about your accommodations. Maybe they will ask you, is there anything you would like to change about the place you live in? Or do you plan to live there for a long time? Again, these are just some examples. There are many other topics and questions that you could be asked about, like work, what you study, your friends, your hobbies, anything along those lines. Think of part 1 like small talk between 2 people. The examiner is just getting to know you. Though part 1 is more laid back than parts 2 and 3, this doesn't mean you should totally blow it off. You still need to prepare, or you could be caught off guard. Okay, that's all there is to part 1. Let's move on and talk about how to give a full answer to IELTS speaking part 1 questions. As a general rule, a good answer is about 3 to 5 sentences. Unprepared test takers give answers that have fewer than 3 sentences. That's not good. Remember, you're here to prove you can speak English, so you need to give the examiner long answers in order for them to grade you. Let's look at an example. In this example, 2 students give answers to the same question. What kind of food do you like to eat? Student B's answer is way too short and vague, whereas student A's answer is longer and has more information. Because of this, even if both students' English levels are the same, student A's answer received a much higher score. Now, you might ask how to give a longer answer. Actually, it's pretty easy. There are 5 techniques you can use to extend your answers: providing reasons, providing examples, providing detail, talking about the past or the future, and making speculations. The only way to master these 5 techniques is to practice them. In some cases, you want to provide reasons, where in others you'll want to provide examples. You'll need to train your brain to recognize which technique will be used simply by the question being asked. Now, let's take a closer look at these 5 techniques. Let's start off our techniques with providing reasons. Providing a reason is a great way to make your answer longer and more detailed. You can use phrases like because, as, the reason why, since, and thanks to in your speaking responses. Let's listen to some IELTS speaking part 1 questions and sample answers that provide reasons. As you listen, you can repeat what you heard or pause the video and practice by providing your own answer to the question.
I am really into swimming. So I like to swim in my free time. I suppose this is thanks to the influence of my parents, who both like swimming. My favorite TV programs are dramas, since I don't have to think too much when I watch them. They're a little overdramatic at times, but that's part of the fun. I like watching films with my family and friends because afterwards we can talk about our favorite parts and figure out what we think the plot was about. My favorite teacher in high school was my English teacher. The reason why she was my favorite teacher is that she taught very well and spent time making sure we understood new words. I enjoyed several subjects, but the one I liked the most was probably science. I put my love of science down to the fact that I grew up in a family where my parents loved science, and I was taught to have an inquiring mind.
All right, I hope you found this technique easy. Now let's move on to the second technique, providing examples. Providing examples is another great way to make your answer longer. To give an example, you can say, for example, for instance, take something for, as an example. A case in point is, again, let's listen to some example questions and answers.
Yes, I like to keep fit. I am keen on sports. For instance, I play basketball every week and use the gym whenever I have the chance. Yes, I really do. Take learning English as an example. I love reading English magazines and listening to English podcasts. Well, my least favorite thing about it is that there aren't too many fun things to do or see. A case in point is that shopping centers and restaurants close too early. I mostly listen to music on my phone with headphones. For example, when I take the train, I like to listen to something to pass the time.
Okay, now let's look at the third technique, providing detail. Whenever you are asked a question that asks you to describe something, which I call descriptive questions, you can provide details in your speaking answers. Here are some common descriptive questions, such as, tell me about your hometown. Tell me about the kind of accommodation you live in. Tell me about the favorite shop you often go to, and the like. Let's listen to the sample answers.
My hometown, Delhi, is the second largest in India. The capital of the country, New Delhi, is also there. There is an international airport in Delhi, so it's easy to travel in and out of the country from there. It's a bookshop near where I live. It's on the main street. I often go in there to browse and have a look through all the books they have. You know, it was about a year ago now, but I still remember it fairly well. My first day at work was slightly hectic and overwhelming, and I actually made a lot of mistakes. Fortunately, my coworkers and supervisor were patient with me, and I got through it okay. Things at work improved quite a bit once I learned my way around.
Okay, moving along to our next technique, talking about the past or the future. So, basically, you can use this technique if the question is asking about your current situation or is asking you if you have done something before. A typical question would be, who do you live with now? If you just say, I live with my parents, you'll get a low score because it is far too short. What you can do is make the answer longer is to also talk about who you lived with in the past or who are you going to live with in the future. So a longer answer can be, I live with my parents and my older brother now, But I used to live with my younger brother 3 years ago when we went to the same college. All right, let's look at more examples.
I am currently living in Delhi, which is the second most populated city in India. I've lived there for a couple of years, but I used to live in Bangalore, which is also a big city in southern India. No, not at the moment. I am unemployed now, but I am planning to apply for some internship positions this summer. Hopefully, things will change soon. No, I've never been to a concert before, but I think I will. Concerts are always happening around where I live, so I will try to go check them out when I can.
Finally, let's talk about the last technique, making speculations. If you encounter a question which you don't have a definite answer to, you have a wonderful opportunity to make a speculation. Consider this question. Do you think you'll ever live in another country? If you're not sure whether you'll ever live in another country, you could use the phrase like, I suppose. For example, I suppose I'd be happy to leave my country if I was offered a cool job abroad. Notice the sentence pattern is, I suppose I'd do this if I was in this situation. This is the conditional type 2. It is used to talk about a hypothetical situation. The conditional type 2 is built like this. Subject, would, could, might. Verb, if, subject, and simple past. If you can use the conditional type 2 correctly in your answer, it will really help boost your score on the IELTS speaking exam as you demonstrate fantastic grammar. Okay, now let's listen to some example answers that make speculations and use the conditional type 2. Pay attention to the highlighted words which are used to make a speculation.
I suppose I'd be happy to leave my country if I was offered a job abroad that was interesting. I doubt whether I'll ever go there, but I'd love to go to Africa to see the wild nature. Right now, I don't have money for vacation. If I had more money, I'd probably go with my girlfriend. You know, that's a tricky one. It would probably be working as a software engineer in Google if I managed to pass Google's interview. You know, that's a good question. Let me see. I would say I am, but that depends on what it means to be polite. I think being polite means respecting others, and I try my best to do that.
Okay, that's the end of today's video. And remember, practice makes perfect.